And today we're going to talk about chapter 17 to the end of Freak the Mighty. And so this book is by Rodman Philbrick. And so let's dive right in. So chapter 17's name is By All That's Holy. Okay, so now let's put ourselves into Max's shoes. How would you feel if your dad, who killed your mom, is leading you to this house? How would you feel? And I want you to use a simile to describe this, and also a metaphor. So, if, for example, you could say, "I was as scared as a lightning bug trapped in a cage." I mean, a glass jar, okay? Or something like that. And then I also wanted to ask you, how do you think that Iggy feels around Killer Kane? Iggy, Iggy Lee, how do you think that he feels around Killer Kane? And you can sort of tell from his body language. How do you think that he feels about Killer Kane? Okay, and I also wanted to ask you, do you think that they're stealing stuff? Because do you think that it's right to go into another person's house because it's vacant? And could you compare this? Could you compare this to something else? It would that would be the same as blank, So you could do that. And so I wanted to ask you, do you think it's right that Killer Kane is tying up his own son? And do you think that's fair? Would you like it if you had been Maxwell and you had been tied up? Okay, I also wanted to ask you, do you think that everything that Killer Kane said, for example, "I've been locked up like an animal. Every single night I cry myself to sleep, and that's a fact. Killer Kane, that's just an unkind nickname they hung on me. You know how kids can be mean in school, mean as animals? It was like that, only these weren't kids. They were adults who should know better, except they're so ignorant and hateful, they believe the worst." So, do you think that what he's saying is actually the truth? Or do you think he's the person who's ignorant and hateful and hateful? Okay, I also wanted to ask you, what I wanted to ask you was, do you think that Killer Kane, when you were reading the book and you didn't know what was going to happen next, what do you think was going to happen next? Were you nervous that Killer Kane was going to take Maxwell far away? Or were you confident that someone would come to the rescue? Okay, chapter 18, which is called Never Trust a Cripple. So he woke up, right? And so there's Loretta. And so the thing is, I wanted to ask you, do you think that when they go into the burned house, right? So that's gonna come up. And so before that, I wanted to tell you about the cop. right? The cop that's looking around. Do you think that cop is just there because about Kenny Kane getting loose, Killer Kane? Or do you think it's just, like normal things and it's just a regular patrol? Okay, and I also wanted to ask you, okay, 19 is Into the Black Down Under. And so and how would you describe this house? Simile metaphor, so I'm gonna do a metaphor. It's like the burned house was a pile of trash. The reason the pile of trash part came up was because I'm reading a really cool book, and the kid in the book can actually control trash. So, I know, pretty weird, but that happened. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, so the thing is, Killer Kane goes up, and then so Max is there, right? And then Loretta Lee comes up, right? And once you learn that Iggy and Loretta wanted to set Maxwell free, how did your point of view, your opinion about them change? At first I thought that Loretta Lee and Iggy were like a bad people, but are they really bad people compared to Killer Kane? And I also wanted to ask you, how do you think that Max felt when he heard Loretta's voice? Metaphor, simile. I've already demonstrated for you, but I'm just gonna do one more, okay? And so, actually no, because you have to think about how he felt. So, I wanted to ask you, Loretta was just about to help Max when suddenly Killer Kane came up, right? And these two hands, they're squeezing her neck, right? And Loretta looks like he's going, and like nobody's there to stop Killer Kane, right? And when you read that part, everything that Killer Kane said before about like that everybody was ignorant and that he was misunderstood and that the stupid nickname Killer Kane was just something that was not actually that did not actually describe him. Everything that you read back then and when you read this, how did that information that you already read, how you knew that information was? I'm gonna let you fill in the blank, right? It was false lies, right? And when Loretta was getting choked, did you think that there was no hope at all for Max? And what about Loretta? Did you think that she was going to survive? Okay. And finally, chapter 20 is called Freak the Mighty Strikes Again. So when you read the chapter title, how did you feel? Like you were like, Freak the Mighty? Freaks here? Wow. How did you feel about it? And then suddenly, suddenly Maxwell begins to talk about everything, right? He begins to talk so he says, stop, right? And then he says that he does remember when his dad killed his mother, right? And every detail. So when you began to read that, how did you feel toward Max? Because we knew that Max's mom had died, but when we actually read that description, how did you feel toward Max? Metaphor. And Killer Kane. Why do you think that Killer Kane wants Max's support so much? Even though he can just live alone. And I also wanted to ask you, that's just when Freak comes in with a squirt gun. And when Freak came in with a squirt gun, how did you feel about the size? Like a big dude who's already choked people and killed people against a little kid with a squirt gun. So in that scenario, who did you think was going to win? Probably the guy who had choked and killed a lot of people, right? And so, do you think that from 1 to 10, how from like 10 is on a scale from 1 to 10, how much is Freak a genius? Like 10 is like as smart as Albert Einstein, 1 is, well, you can guess, okay? And so, also I wanted to ask you, did you actually believe that there was, like the H2SO4? And I'm very sorry if I did not get that right, but first of all, I have not majored in chemistry. And second of all, I have only 1% of my knowledge of chemistry. And that's just that chemistry, you mix liquids and there's a lot of explosions. So that's not a lot of information. So, okay. And anyway, I wanted to ask you, when Max and Freak just ran out of the cellar and saw the light and everybody, how did you feel? And this time I want you to use anything, metaphor, simile, yeah. And I also wanted to ask you, Freak, what he did, how would you describe his actions? Would you describe them foolish or brave or courageous? Well, brave and courageous are basically the same thing, but you can use any. And because sometimes you do things because you think that you're brave, but sometimes you're foolish. Like, let's say that you have no climbing experience, but you're like, hey guys, I'm gonna tackle Half Dome in Yosemite. And if you've seen Half Dome, I have a lot of times because I went to Yosemite National Park 2 times. You know that's it's just not, it's not just an easy thing to do. Yeah, it's very hard. And so there's a line between bravery and foolishness. So do you think that Freak was foolish or brave? Even if he did survive and win this meeting, but still, you gotta still think, right? Just because this person went out alive doesn't mean that it's gonna keep on happening, right? And if you had to use one word to describe Freak, then how would you describe him? So so you can make a list of all the words, and then you can just pick out the best one. So I'm gonna write here. Okay, so when you've made your list, just pause the video right here. When you finish your list, then you can just unpause the video and I'll share my list, okay? Okay, so my list is actually right here because I didn't write them all down, but the starting letters of all of them, because I'm pretty good at if there's something like one starting letter, I'm like, oh yeah, so I'm pretty good at these kinds of things. So here's the things. Okay, so number 1 is genius, smart, awesome, friendly, nice, kind, prodigy. So that was just, I only had time for those before the time ran out. But anyway, so, okay, so from there, I think I'll choose, I really can't choose between kind and prodigy. Well, anyway, I'm gonna have to talk about that later. I'm gonna have to think about that more. Yeah, I don't know which one to choose. He's both of them, but I think I'll choose prodigy. I think that really describes Freak a lot. And then when Freak says, "Freak the mighty strikes again," what kind of feeling do you think Maxwell had? And this time, I want you to use nature. So like, how do you think that he felt it? So I'm gonna give you a example, and this example probably might sort of spoil it because this is a very, but there is a lot of other examples. It's like Maxwell felt like he was breathing the fresh air. He was breathing in the sense of a field of flowers. Okay? I could have done a better one, but then you might have also done the same thing. So I just didn't want to spoil it all. But after, just pause the video right here again and make it, and then after that, I'll share my other one, okay? Okay, so the other one is Maxwell felt like he was drinking from a fresh, beautiful, cold, refreshing mountain stream. Well, fresh and refreshing, sort of the same thing. But my point is that could be another one, right? And so that's just a pretty quick. Now I just did that because the next chapter. Chapter 21's title is The Accident of Nature. So I just decided to just do that one. And so if you had been the fair Gwen and the freak had been gone, how would you have felt toward freak? Metaphor, please. And how would you have reacted when you saw freak again? And also, how do you think that Grim felt when he saw that Max was gone on Christmas morning? And Christmas morning, Christmas was actually yesterday to me, and I got a lot of really cool things, including books. So I'm reading that series right now. It's called The Trials of Apollo, a really amazing book series by Rick Riordan. And I also got some other cool things. I like all of the presents, including a mouse. You know those mouse that you use for the computer. And okay, but anyway, if I say my list of presents, it's gonna take 100 million years. So let's go back to the book. And so I wanted to ask you, this Christmas vacation. How would you describe the Christmas vacation overall? I would like to use maybe a metaphor. And do you think that this was the best Christmas vacation Max ever had? But do you think that this would have been a preferable Christmas vacation for you? Because if you like a lot of adventure, well, this was a lot of adventure. So, but again, it was very dangerous. So you could choose, right? And also, I wanted to ask you, what I wanted to ask you was, do you think that when Killer Kane gets out of jail, what do you think that he's going to do to Max? Or do you think that Killer Kane will be like, who cares about Max? I'm done with him. Yeah, how do you think that he'll react to Max? What do you think he'll do to Max when he gets out of jail when he's an old man, right? And so, chapter 22 is called Remembering is Just an Invention of the Mind. Do you think that remembering is just an invention of the mind? And also, Freak is saying, like, don't you remember the Ice Age when glaciers covered everything and, like, saber-toothed tigers? So that was not a quote from the book. I just reached into my memory. Speaking of the Ice Age, I watched the movie Ice Age. Really amazing, awesome Disney animation. I really liked that. It was pretty funny. I advise you to watch that one. But anyway, if you research enough about the Ice Age, do you think that you could also remember the Ice Age? And what are the few other things that you would like to remember about the past? I would like to remember and do about like 3, I guess. Number 1 would be the Renaissance. I've always wanted to remember the Renaissance, the Age of Exploration. And finally, the Elizabethan era. All of them really famous and interesting periods in history. But anyway, so I wanted to ask you, why do you, if on your birthday, do you also not have the appetite because you're so excited for your gifts? Or are you the kind of person who loves food and after that, like, you get the gifts, like, you don't care? And so, I wanted to ask you, so suddenly on his birthday, Freak has a seizure, right? And he has to go to the hospital. How do you think that the fear of Gwen and Max felt at that moment, metaphor? And all in all, do you think that Freak's birthday, from a scale to 1 to 10, how do you think that the Freak's birthday was? 10 is like amazing, like you earned $1 billion. So I'm pretty sure that my birthday, even though it's amazing, it will not be 10, because like 10 would be like you're a billionaire suddenly. Maybe it will be 10, because even though I'm not a billionaire, I really like my birthday. And excuse me. And so, do you think that did you think that Freak was going to even survive or not? Okay, so now we are chapter 23 is called The Empty Book. So anyway, so when you imagine the Freak in your head, in your brain, how did you like react to what you saw in your brain, even though it wasn't real? I sort of like winced. I was like, oh, that must have hurt, because I'm not a very big fan of. I like going to the hospital. Don't ask me why. I just do. But I hate shots. Shots. I just hate them. The last time I took a shot, I was a little dramatic, even though it didn't hurt that much. But in my defense, it did hurt a little. Yeah, it did hurt. So I was like, oh. So it didn't hurt that much, but I like to be very dramatic. So don't blame me about that. It's just a trait I have. And do you think that Dr. Spivak really trusts Max or not? And anyway, I wanted to ask you, do you think that Max can write? And if so, the book that we are reading, who do you think really wrote this book? I know Rodman Philbrick actually made the book, but like, you know, aside from Rodman Philbrick, who do you think made this book? Max, right? So I thought that was a very cool one. That's really cool, right? And okay, so chapter 24 is the return of Kicker. And so so Max wants to go to the hospital so much, he wakes up like early in the morning. Did you have a feeling that something bad was going to happen because Max went out? And also, I wanted to ask you, we know that Freak died, right? Because and the bad thing was, he knew that he was gonna have a short life. How terrible is it that you're gonna know that you're gonna die soon? How terrible is that, right? How do you think that Max felt when Freak died? Metaphor. How do you think that Freak felt when he was dying? Simile. So I think that Max felt Max was. So, how he felt like, you'll be like, Max's feelings were a tornado or hurricane or something like that. And I think that Freak felt like, Freak felt like, and we actually don't know how he feels, right? So we're gonna have to think about that. I think that he felt a little scared, but then again, he knows this, he's prepared for this, so he's not that scared as I would be. So I think he will be, Freak feels like a bowling pin with with a bowling ball rolling right at him, sort of like that, okay? And so, do you also need some alone time when something bad happens? Have you ever had that? An example. Give me. Well, I can't really hear you, but give yourself, okay, an example. One example is I got really mad because I didn't get this pet, and I gotta admit, now I think back, and it was actually just today, and I gotta admit now that actually I think I am getting not spoiled, but I should be happy because I got a really cool thing where you can draw and all that. So, and the thing is, you can save it on the computer. And there's all these different modes and so many different colors and like everything. So it's really cool. And when what Loretta said is chapter 25, right? And so we learned that the Fair Gwen is in California with with a boyfriend, right? And do you think that it's a little fair for Freak that he's suddenly I'm pretty sure he's not forgotten, but do you think it's fair for Freak that now the Fair Gwen has just moved on to other things? Not really discarding him, but I think that since you're a genius, I'm pretty sure you already figured out what I'm trying to say. And now there's Freak's dictionary. I'm not gonna go through that, but it's really funny and interesting. What did you think about Freak's dictionary? And you can just use your own words for this. And this time, if you want, and optionally, you can compare this to nature. And do you think that so because we're done, Freak the Mighty, what genre do you think it should be? I know you would think children's book or something like that, but what I really meant was aside from being a children's book and all that, how to describe it, like tragedy, comedy, etc., horror, okay? Something like that. So what do you think would be this? And I'm not gonna really say it right now because I don't wanna, but because sometimes you need to think, and I'm not gonna give you the answers, which sort of makes it so that you have your own path in the book while others have other paths, which is very interesting and it makes you think in a lot of different ways, which is awesome about humanity, that we can think in a lot of different ways. Well, anyway, guys, we're finished with Freak the Mighty. First of all, I want to ask you, how did you like the amazing book? I would give it like a 5-star review. I would like this amazing book, it touches my heart. And it's an amazing book for children. I loved it, something like that, okay? And then I will give a review about how my book was a little damaged, okay, fine. So it wasn't damaged, but one page had a little fold on it. But after that, the book was okay. I mean, it was awesome. So I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna put that in my review, but anyway, also I wanted to ask you, if you had to write a review to, I don't know, let's say if you bought a book, what would you write in your review? And if you bought the book, Walmart or Amazon, or if you just got it from the library, still just how would you write your review? How would you I just said my review, but I didn't really think about it. But if I thought about it, I would get a good paragraph. But for so far, that's my review. I know, pretty lame, but okay. So, what was your favorite character in Freak the Mighty? What was your least favorite character? Least favorite character in my I think that Killer Kane was the top least the baddest character. Okay. Also, what was your favorite part in the chapters that we just read about? And favorite parts don't have to be happy. They can be like scary and exciting. Some of my favorite parts in books are scary and exciting ones. And what was your favorite part in the whole book, not just the chapters that we read? And finally, I wanted to ask you, what do you predict is going to happen next for Max? What do you think his future is going to be like? And the really awesome thing is, Freak the Mighty has another book, and it's called Max the Mighty, right? Freak is Kevin, right, on the shoulders. And so Freak the Mighty and Max the Mighty. So you gotta check out Max the Mighty, which is the next book, the sequel to Freak the Mighty. So I'm actually gonna check that book out. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna make a book club about that, okay? But for right now, guys, it's right now nighttime, so I'm just gonna sleep. And I hope that if it's nighttime for you, you also have a good sleep. And if it's daytime, then have a great rest of your day or night. To people everywhere, keep on reading, because reading's awesome. And just be happy, okay, guys? I was just stuck on the words, but just be happy. Bye.